This is Innovation in Leadership, where we interview Navy SEALs, venture capitalists, pro athletes, best-selling authors, Hollywood filmmakers, really as many different kinds of high achievers as we can get to come on the show. Today's episode is going to be from our mini-series that we created with Corporate Alliance, asking top CEOs and executives and entrepreneurs who have had very large exits, specifically about their thoughts on leadership and people. Today we've got Alex Dunn. He's the president of Vivint.
What I quickly found and has been reinforced kind of through my career now is that everybody has like really different opinions, and you can go in and kind of give a pitch to somebody and they can think that you're stupid and it's the worst investment they've ever heard of. You can go give that same pitch to somebody else the next day and they think you're the smartest person they've ever heard, listened to.
Also, I want to talk to you about one of our show's sponsors. I met these guys back on episode 6. CEO Zach Smith was telling me all about starting a skateboard company and how much he hated doing the bookkeeping for a skateboard shop, and how he really got led to start this business, Bookly, that's a hybrid combining bookkeeping software and human services. And I'll tell you why I let him become a sponsor. It's because I use their service now. I don't love paying $50 an hour for bookkeepers to do stuff that I know software could do way, way cheaper. But I don't love bookkeeping at all. So I want a real live human who knows what they're talking about to help me with the stuff I don't understand. Probably the straw that broke the camel's back for me, though, the thing that put me over the top was that they could do my taxes and payroll also. So totally suggest checking them out. Go to their website, bookly.co, and check out their flat rates. I've been super happy with them. So now on to today's episode. Alex, thanks for making time.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
So for everybody who doesn't know Vivint, across the country might be listening to this, tell us about Vivint.
So there's really two Vivints. We spun out a solar business. So there's Vivint Solar that we took public, and then the business that we'll be talking about today is Vivint Smart Home. And it's a nationwide smart home business, and we really bring smart home technologies to the masses. And so things like security and cameras and thermostats and door locks and garage door openers, and then having that all work on a platform through one app. And then kind of the next generation for us is bringing AI into that, so the home can start to sense what's going on and really help you manage your home better.
Like, what would be an example of that?
So we just recently rolled out our Sky service, which really is essentially with the sensors in your home, we can sense some different states, things like we know you're going to sleep or waking up. The home knows if you're there or you're not, or you're on vacation. And so because we are connected to things like thermostats and door locks and the security sensors and to garage door openers and other things like that, we can say the home can sense, hey, you're on vacation, and either your thermostat is cranking, or your front door is unlocked, or your garage door is open. And so Sky can start to make suggestions to you on things that you could do to maybe manage your home more efficiently or make it more safe. And so that's where we're using some of that AI to help people kind of manage their homes. So you can see a world in the future where that most people that own a home have a nightly ritual that they go through before they go to sleep. Lock the doors, turn this on and off, do kind of check everything. We think what you should do in a smart home is just go to sleep, and when your home sees that you're doing that, then it kind of shuts the house down to the level that you would do that. So now you don't really have to have the burden of having to manage that process every night.
One of the things I think would be fun to talk about is people who haven't been a part of large transactions, or maybe working with some of the bigger finance companies in the world. Can you talk a little bit about first bringing equity in, like the Goldman Sachs and the Peterson Partners and that kind of stuff, what that was like?
Yeah. So we did a deal 12 years ago. The company was really small at the time, where we did two things. We sold 50% of the equity in our business, and we sold that to Goldman Sachs, Peterson Partners, and Jupiter Partners. So Peterson is a private equity group in Salt Lake, and Jupiter is a group out of New York. And then I think everybody knows Goldman. So we sold 50% equity in the business. We also put in place at that time a credit facility that would allow us to grow our business. Part of our business model is to make it affordable, the solutions affordable to the consumer. We subsidize a lot of the cost up front. And then, we're getting kind of contractual recurring revenue over the long term. And so in order to do that and keep those customers, you have to have money up front. And so the best way to do that typically is to borrow that money. And so that really, when we did the transaction with Goldman and Peterson and Jupiter, we sold 50% equity in the business. We also put in place a credit facility that allowed us to help transform the business. From the time before that transaction, we were essentially selling alarm contracts for other companies like ADT or Monotronics. So we were a dealer. And then the investment thesis around having that equity brought in and the credit facility was that we would transform into a full service company and keep the customers ourselves. And so, it actually took a really long time to get the equity. I headed up that process, and in fact, I was outside of the company and I was working with Mitt Romney when he was governor of Massachusetts, and that for me, I had done 2 high-tech startups before that, and I was with him for about 3 years, and it was always intended that was just a little bit of a detour for me. And so I wanted to get back into business and ideally find a company to buy. And so I had some private equity groups that I had known and said they would fund a deal if I found it. And so I went and found, back then it was Apex, and brought them the deal. They actually turned it down. And so then I actually had a decision. I said either I've got to this is done, or go find some other kind of equity sponsors to do the deal. And so I did that, and got a lot of people. I mean, I think it was over a dozen groups that I got to like investment committee process, which is pretty far along the process, that then came back and said no. And one of the big problems back then was the company hadn't kept any of its customers. So there was some risk around, can you build out the infrastructure to bill and service and do those things, and kind of what happens, what the attrition profile of the customer would be like. And so it took a long time. It took like about a year to find anybody who wanted to kind of take a chance. The good thing is that we, for all 3 of those groups, we delivered kind of one of the best returns on any deal they had ever done. And even for Goldman, I think when we sold the business to Blackstone and those original investors cashed out, we were a really big chunk of Goldman's net income for that quarter, the whole bank. So we did well for the people who took a bet on us early, but that's kind of how that worked.
Any advice for someone who's looking at a process like that, or what you wish you would have known going into it?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, when you go into a process like that, I think initially I thought what I had to do was position kind of the investment in a way that would be attractive to the people that I was pitching to, and what I quickly found and has been reinforced kind of through my career now is that everybody has like really different opinions, and you can go in and kind of give a pitch to somebody, and they can think that you're stupid and it's the worst investment they've ever heard of. You can go give that same pitch to somebody else the next day, and they think you're the smartest person they've ever heard, listened to, and it's the best investment that they've ever heard. And so I think what's really important is that you have to have a really strong perspective on what you think, and what you think the opportunity is, what you think the investment thesis is, and you have to have kind of the courage of your convictions around that. And if you do that, then there also has to be like a kernel of truth, because I hate saying this to people, and then they tell me, hey, I have this idea to an anti-gravity machine or something, whatever, and they're like, I have the courage of my convictions, and it's like, okay, I don't know that there's even a kernel of truth in kind of what your idea is. So you have to have enough self-awareness to know, hey, one, there's a lot of risk and it may not work, but two, there's some kernel of truth in what it is that you're trying to accomplish, even if it's a big, kind of outrageous idea, that there's still some, I think you've got Elon Musk is a guy who dreams big, and, but there's kind of kernels of truth in everything that he's trying to do. And he is able to, at least in some measure, start to deliver on that, right? Launching rocket ships, and he's doing it. And so you have to have enough self-awareness and have a kernel of truth. And then I think you have to have the courage of your conviction, and kind of be okay with people saying no to you. I've actually found that usually the best opportunities are not ones that everybody sees. And if you have too many people like agreeing with you, then my guess is there's not going to be as much opportunity, because it's more apparent, and then lots of people are going to be doing that. And so I had a really strong kind of courage of my conviction and the investment thesis around this company. And after a lot of no's, I was able to get, a yes, and then kind of parlay that into multiple yeses, and then able to get the deal done.
Also, I want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors, Skillshare. They're doing a promo for us, for everybody listening to the show. It's skillshare.com/leader, where they're going to let anybody get 2 months of access to their 18,000 classes for just 99 cents at that code, skillshare.com/leader. And I think for me, one of the reasons that I like Skillshare, and probably like the classes that are most attractive to me, are the really high credibility ones. Like, you can learn email marketing from MailChimp. I mean, these are the guys that make $500 million a year sending email out for their customers. They've got the data. They're legitimate experts on the subject. And as I'm getting advice, I know that I should be building my list better than I am. That's the kind of people that I want to get my advice from, and you can get it right there on those classes. One last time, if you want that 99 cents for the 2 months, it's skillshare.com/leader. Thinking about this concept you brought up a couple times there about self-awareness, I think anybody getting into entrepreneurship obviously has to ignore statistics to some degree to be willing to get in, right?
Yeah.
So most people who are out in out in front, they're in charge, they're a leader, they're an entrepreneur. There's probably a lot of them who have a pretty good courage of the conviction,
yep.
Right? Conviction. But as far as, what if someone was wanting to foster more self-awareness? Do you have any ideas for how can you build a habit towards self-awareness? I mean, telling myself be more self-aware is probably not going to get it done.
Actually, the funny thing is that if you're telling yourself to be more self-aware, you probably are self-aware. And I've actually had this conversation with some of my friends and people here. It seems to me, self-awareness, you either have it or you don't. And if you don't have it, you don't know you don't have it. It's a little bit, it's like, In fact, Matt Eyring, our Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer, said there was a research study done on how to, some research done on how to like develop self-awareness, and the results were you kind of have to have it, and if you don't have it, you don't know you don't have it. That's kind of the nature of being self-aware. And so I'm not sure I could give advice on, I think the one thing I would say is that there has to be, and the way I tried to describe it is there has to be some kernel of truth in what you're trying to accomplish, right? And, I see, people come to me and pitch. Todd and I invest in companies, and sometimes people just are not really aware that what they're pitching is either not realistic at all, or it's not the way it's positioned, the way they're positioning themselves in the market is not unique, or and so it would be hard for me to say to them, hey, you just need to have the courage of your conviction, because I'd be like, I think they're just going to keep kind of hitting their head against the wall here and never get where they want to go, because there's kind of no kernel of truth in kind of what they're trying to accomplish. But I also tell people on the flip side, I'm sure there were people, especially early in my career when I was raising that capital, that maybe thought the same thing about me. And so, ultimately you have to kind of live and be your authentic self. And if you feel strongly you need to go chase a dream that other people think is crazy, then you should do it. But you should at least understand why people maybe think it's crazy, and how you're going to do what they think either can't be done or shouldn't be done or won't be done. Not just like, well, it's going to happen, right? And so for me, I knew exactly why people were not investing in the company, and I knew that I could overcome that risk, which back then was they hadn't kept customers, and can you build a full service company around the ability to keep customers? And I knew that was something that I could do, and I didn't view as a big risk, but other people did. And so, it's very hard. And ultimately I think it's about kind of being authentic to who you are, and going and trying to accomplish what it is that you want to accomplish, and being as self-aware as you can be. But also, if I would have listened to what everybody told me, I wouldn't have done really anything I've done in my career.
You think about this concept of being authentic, trying to be our real selves. Why do you think there is a temptation not to be?
So, at least for me, and I can only speak for me, I had a perception early in my career that successful people were a certain way. And when I would look at people and say, okay, this person is successful because they've done this and they're this way and they have these personality traits, it would cause me like a ton of stress, because I'm like, well, that's not really me. I mean, that's not how I am, or that's not my strength, or I don't know if I can be that way. And so I think the false narrative that was in my head early was that I had to be like somebody else in order to be successful. And I think, again, as I have matured and had lots of experience now, what I've realized is that the most successful people, and this is something I believe pretty strongly in, is that they strengthen their strengths and not their weaknesses. And so that to me is being authentic to yourself, because you kind of realize, okay, here's what I'm good at. And many times it's not even a conscious thing. It's not like people saying, okay, I'm good at this. So it's what they're passionate about. It's kind of what they gravitate towards. And so they become really good at those things. And then that's what leads to much of their success. And so if, I'm looking at a person like that, and it just happens that my strengths or the things I'm interested in or good at are not those same things. The worst thing I would tell someone to do is try and emulate that. Because if you're, trying to turn your weaknesses into something stronger than someone's strengths, it's really hard. And so I would say to someone, try to be true to who you are, right? If maybe, I think you look at different kinds of business leaders. Mark Zuckerberg, obviously a very successful guy, doesn't seem to be the most personable person. And even, detail oriented but he's brought in people that have helped fill that, but he has played a really super important critical role in getting Facebook to where it's at. But you look at different, entrepreneurs and leaders, and they're very different. They're much more outgoing and charismatic, but I think typically those were traits that were kind of came naturally or strong to begin with, and then they kind of built their success around those instead of saying, oh, this is what I need in order to be successful, so I'm going to, create it.
I feel like there's a lot of truth in what you said. To me, it's kind of like the Michael Jordan didn't make a lot of money playing baseball principle, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Why not spend a lot of time trying to figure out what your basketball is? Even though Nolan Ryan made a ton of money playing baseball, why don't you figure out what your basketball is?
That's right. And I've actually found that typically the things we're good at, we actually value the least. And I have many people that I've worked with in Vivint and my other companies that who are exceptionally good at certain things, but they look at other people and they're like, I don't have this, or I wish I was better at this. And I'm like, but you're the best in our company at, X. You're the best, product manager. And they're like, well, I wish I was more technical, or I wish I, so-and-so has. And I think it's because typically the things that we're best at come a little bit easier to us. If we're good at it, we're interested in, and it maybe we're kind of have some innate abilities. That stuff kind of comes easily. And we don't actually have to exert as much effort to be really good or better than most people. But then you see the things that you're not very good at, and you look at other people and say, oh, I wish, And again, my advice in those situations has always been, look, strengthen your strengths. Like, become doubly good at what you're the best at, and you will be way more successful than, picking something that maybe is really hard for you. Now, I would also say you have to neutralize your weaknesses. So I wouldn't, if your weaknesses are like pulling you down, then it's maybe hard to get to where you want to go. So you need to neutralize those, but I don't think you necessarily need to make them your strengths.
Especially in organizations, though, maybe you can hire someone to cover that, or maybe you can get programs or something structurally to take care of that, right?
100%. And when you're building teams and you're a leader and you're an entrepreneur, you need to I think you need to have self-awareness on, hey, what am I good at and what am I not? And then, fill in those gaps with people that have strengths that are complementary. And there's tons of analogies with this. If you want to go back to sports, I mean, if you're going to have a team of all centers or in basketball or all, guards, you're probably not going to be as good as a team that maybe has complementary pieces that play off of each other.
Yeah. We're closing in on the end of part one of the interview here, but I feel like kind of what you're saying is, I feel like you're identifying how unhelpful comparison can be, of like, instead of focusing on ourselves and figuring out what our basketball is, when we start going around of like, oh, success people have that, look, I must try and figure that out, even though it's not my basketball.
For sure. and it caused me a lot of angst early on, because I would be like, I'm not sure I can be like that, and the false narrative in my head was, if I'm not like that, I can't be successful because that person's successful. And as I got exposed to a more broad set of people that I would have kind of characterized as successful in their chosen careers, I realized, one, they were all different, and many times they were actually not what you would consider a well-rounded person. They had some really flat, sides to their personalities and to their character and to, their abilities. And it started to help me have more confidence that maybe, if I was authentic to who I was, that I had some things that I felt were strong, that I could kind of hang on to and start to develop, that then would help lead me down a path that, would hopefully allow me to achieve, the same kind of success I had seen those other people achieve.
I love it. It's kind of like recognizing they're a little lopsided makes it okay for me to be lopsided, huh?
Yeah. And the truth is, again, as I get more experience under my belt, I realize that they're actually pretty lopsided. I mean, most people are pretty lopsided. And so it's okay to be lopsided. And so that must mean, at least based on all the data points that I have and experience, is that that you don't actually have to be like a perfectly well-rounded person to achieve success. Like, you can actually have weaknesses and not be good at things, and actually still, achieve a high level of success.
I love it. Well, let's end part here for part one. Make sure to tune into our next episode. We're going to ask Alex about doing $2 billion transaction with Blackstone and some of his examples in treating people. Well, that's it for the episode. One other thing I wanted to tell you about, if you remember the guys from Convoy in episodes back, Ken Free and Trent Mano, I went on one of their CEO trips to New York, and I met a guy named Brent Thompson, very successful entrepreneur. He was former CEO of Jive Communications, big company now, I think $300 or $400 million. Anyways, he started a new company called blipbillboards.com. I'm super stoked they're a sponsor now. But I remember a year and some ago when I met him, I thought it was genius. Instead of having to buy 6 months or a year's worth of billboard for thousands of dollars, you can buy 8 seconds at a time for like 10 or 20 cents. You pick what billboard you want it on, what time of day you want it to run, and it just puts so much power in the hands of marketers and CEOs who want to try something and see if it works. You can buy as many or as few as you want, change it as many times as you want. I think now our podcast is being advertised on billboards in like 18 different states because we have these guys as sponsors. We're pretty excited about it. Hope you check out blipbillboards.com. Thanks.